Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Tava Karakamalavare Nakam Nadbhuta Swingham Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. How many coming for the first time to the Q&A session? Raise your hands. Okay, few. We do this every night here. It's pretty simple. It's an ancient tradition, questions and answers. It's how Vedic teachings have been shared for thousands of years, and we all have a nice opportunity to come together in the evenings here in this very holy place and have some discussions. But it all begins with a question. And so I will reach out to all of you and see, would anyone like to begin the evening with a good question or even a mediocre question or half decent question would be okay. Got a question?
जय श्री कृष्ण जय श्री कृष्ण बोलो इसमें जय श्री कृष्ण डर रही
Like, nope. Some people don't want to chant. They want to chant later on their own terms. Anybody have a question? Okay.
Okay, is this like this? Yeah? Okay. Tomorrow we are going back to London, back to normal life after having amazing time here for a whole week, 10 days. So what do you think or what do you suggest how to take what we have seen, learned here into the normal day-to-day life?
Do not go back. That's the worst thing you can do. I'm just kidding. I'll be going back not too long now either. Not to London, but to New York. So maybe not so different. When I first started coming to India about 40 years ago. I've probably come about 40 times. I've come roughly once a year for about 40 years. And we would go, especially to a place called Vrindavan. Have you been to Vrindavan? Just in Rishikesh. Okay, Vrindavan is wonderful. It's about 6-hour car ride from here. Place of Lord Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's leelas. Thousands of temples and just a very, very special atmosphere. And we'd go to these temples. Some of them are temples that we've heard about that are historic and very important for different reasons. And some of them are small and quiet. Some of them are large and very active. And you'd visit there and you want to take a photograph. It wasn't quite the same back then. I didn't really have any camera, and we didn't have these phones back then. So people would bring their cameras. And but there's rules in the temples. More often than not, they say no photographs allowed. So people would be disappointed sometimes. They'd be like, "Oh, I've come so far, and I want to remember this place. I wish I could take a photograph." And there was one person that used to take us to all these places. Brilliant person. Hey, good to see you. He was a very deep bhakti yogi, and he had really lived in Vrindavan, lived in this place for a long time, learned all the languages that are spoken there. Really, not just memorized, although he did memorize Krishna's leelas in great detail. When you get into the detail, it really expands the experience of hearing Krishna's pastimes. But not just the details, but also the feelings that are there in these leelas, in these divine pastimes. And so he would take us around and take us to these places. And he said, when sometimes the priest would say, no photos. And he'd say, no photos, everybody, we need to respect their rules here. But he said, but maybe you can't take the photo with a camera. But what you need to do, more important, take the photo in your heart. Right there. This is the lens. Excuse me. And this is where the image stays. So the opportunity to come to a place like Rishikesh, where to this day, I mean, what we say to this day, but going back as far as anybody knows, people have come here to step outside of, in one sense, the normal world. Really, the yogis say this is the normal world, and the rest is a bit abnormal. But to step into a spiritual realm, have deeper spiritual thoughts, hopefully begin to realize more deeply that I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not these temporary identities, that I am spirit, I am eternal. One can feel that inside. Let go of false conceptions of who we are, false conceptions of what we need to be happy. You have that feeling, and you feel that feeling in relation to the river, in relation to the temple, in relation to the Kirtan, in relation to the Sangha. You keep photos of that in your heart. You carry them with you. Then you also carry some sadhana, right? So you understand sadhana, the word sadhana, right? So practice. There's the sadhana, the daily practice that you're doing, and then there's the sadhya, the goal of that practice, the aim, where it's meant to take you. So you need to set aside some time in your day, exclusive time, that is dedicated to cultivating that sadhana and aiming for that sadhya. And when you sit down, those pictures can come back up. Those feelings can come back up. The feeling of what it's like to sit peacefully on the bank of the Ganges River, or to immerse yourself into that water and pray. Pray with your pray as deep as you've ever prayed. I want to let go. I want to be free. Please bless me that I can be free. Please bless me that free of all the weight of these false conceptions, and free that the divine love, the prema, that is my nature underneath, that it arises. Feel it here. Remember it there. Don't let it all slip away. Keep coming back to it. And you can come back to it in relation to your sadhana, to your practices. So this needs to be there. You need to, this is one piece of advice that was given to me once by a sadhu. You need some time in your day, exclusive, like maybe an hour or two, exclusively for your spiritual practice. Some hours in your day, exclusive. Then you need some days in your month for exclusive spiritual practice. The whole day is dedicated. Then ideally, a month in the year. Maybe that's a little, people can't get away for that. Then okay, a couple weeks or something like that. You come here, do something like that. If not, other things one can do. So hours in your day, days in your month, months in your year, and then ultimately some years in your life, that you can live exclusively that spiritual life. If we can do this, then we can keep this fire alive. There's a little spark in you. You feel it? Okay. So we want to keep that, just like you keep a little spark. It's windy, you got to kind of cup your hands around it, or it's a little bit low, you got to fan it gently, not too much, but gently, to keep it alive. There's got to be a steady fanning of that spark, and it'll grow. And as it grows, it becomes stronger. It becomes less delicate. It becomes more like I can go into that atmosphere, and rather than it affect me, I can actually become a powerful force in that atmosphere, right? As you grow stronger, like that. One last thing, just one way to conceive of it, is there's two ways that one can approach how to do this spiritual practice. One is called karma sannyas, one is called karma yoga. Karma sannyas means I give up all my worldly duties and I walk away, I go to the forest. And karma yoga means I enter into the world, I embrace my responsibilities with a real sense of responsibility, keeping to my word, being honest, being truthful, being hardworking, giving my best effort, caring for those that I'm meant to care for, being ethical in all my dealings, but doing it with the wisdom of a yogi. I'm not doing it to get something of this world for my external pleasure. I'm operating in this realm with knowledge and detachment, and ultimately doing it for the pleasure of God. Then this is called karma yoga. So one you could call isolating yourself, karma sannyas, walking away from the world. The other you can think of as insulating yourself. You're insulating yourself with knowledge of who you are, knowledge of what this world is, knowledge of the nature of this world, that this world is constantly changing. That is the nature. It's up one moment, it's down the next. Whether it's our bodies, whether it's the weather, whether it's our circumstances at work, whether it's just our emotional kind of in the mind going through ups and downs. I already accept that that's the nature of the material world. Even my own mind, I know that's not me. I know that it's going to feel a little cloudy one day, feel a little sunny the next day, and I've come to terms with that. I can watch that happen from a distance, knowing that that's not me, right? That's, you insulate yourself with this knowledge. Now, with that knowledge, you can reflect on that knowledge as you go through your life and not be affected by that world. You can insulate yourself with these mantras. You can insulate yourself with some good friendships. You can insulate yourself by hearing Bhagavad Gita every day. Highly recommended. In this way, you can insulate yourself and move through that atmosphere without it taking you down. But that actually you can begin to take people up just by being in that state of awareness. Is that okay? Thank you very much. I appreciate your efforts to come to a place like this and be transformed. Thank you. And you have to wear the turban every day too. Okay. Thank you. We had one question here, I think, first. Do you have a question? I thought I saw some. That was, yeah. We'll get to you, sir, too.
It's a bit of a weird question, maybe, but how to be happy?
How to be happy?
Too weird. I can't handle that question. It's in one sense, you know what's weird about it? It's weird that we even have to ask it. But yeah, most of us are out of touch. I'll share an analogy with you. It's a famous one. I probably haven't shared this since the first day we were here or something like that. But these yogis, was Maharaj talking about this? Same exact example? Did you hear Indradyumna Swami's talk before his Kirtan? No? Okay. Some of you heard. Some of you heard maybe. A lot of the wisdom in our tradition comes from forest sages. Sages that lived in these forests, even right here. The main sage from whom all the other sages borrow was Vyasadeva, who, by the way, 9 a.m. tomorrow we go deep into Srila Vyasadeva, the sage who provided all the Vedic literature. 9 till 10 o'clock tomorrow. It's something that everybody needs to know. It almost breaks my heart that sometimes I say, how many of you have heard of Srila Vyasadeva? And people are like, I don't know. And it's like, you have to know. You have to know this. You know, there's a saying that from the vast sky of the mind of the great sage Vyasadeva, all the other sages have borrowed. Right? All of our knowledge, all of our wisdom is coming through the mind of this great sage. But so, in any case, and he lived in the way up here up in these mountains. But so many of the sages did. They lived that lifestyle. And so a lot of the way that they share their knowledge is through analogies, and those analogies tend to be nature analogies. And so one of them has to do with a type of deer that lives in the forest here, and that's called the musk deer. How many of you have never heard of the musk deer? Okay, everybody's heard of the musk deer, right? It's a type of deer. We don't have them where I live in New York. I mean, we don't have deer in New York City. In New York State, there's lots of deer. They look a little different, but these musk deer, they have fangs. They're a little bit small, but they have their most important feature is that somewhere in this near the navel, they store fragrance, the fragrance called musk. And that fragrance is very enchanting. It's like the most enchanting fragrance that is practically you can find on this earth. And so it's used to make perfumes and so on. And it's said that this develops near the navel of the male deer. And in the mating season, that aroma begins to emanate from the body of the deer. And it is quite an aroma. And the deer itself, it smells that aroma. And it's wondering, that is the most enchanting smell I've ever encountered in my entire life. Where is it coming from? It's sniffing around. And it can't determine where it's from. So it starts to search and search and search. And it's having no success. It's so strong. I'm smelling it, but I can't find it. And so it's searching, it's getting kind of frantic. Where is it? Where is it? It's said that the deer will start to run through the forest, searching it. It'll run literally to the state of exhaustion and even collapse, not understanding that the fragrance that it was looking for externally was within itself all along. Okay? Did something just click in your mind? Okay, yes. So the sages say that we are like that we're searching, we're running, we're searching, searching, searching. We live in our own jungles. Like New York City, that's a forest, that's a jungle. They call it the concrete jungle, right? And there's so many places to search. People are searching in the nightclubs, they're searching in the parks, they're searching in the apartments, they're searching in the places of work. They're searching and searching and searching. What are they searching for? Happiness, right? They're searching and they're searching. They're searching until they get exhausted. They even search until the point of collapse. Anybody ever collapse here? It happens. It happens to us, right? Not realizing all along that the happiness that we're searching for is not found in anything external, but it's actually within us, ourselves. Right? So your question was, how do we be happy? How do we become happy? Well, the most important, according to the great sages and the yogis, they would say the most important thing you have to understand right off the bat is that the happiness that you're looking for is not external to yourself. We think we're going to find it through this object or this circumstance. And so then we're trying to acquire objects and change circumstances so that we'll be happy. Some of us are good at acquiring objects. Some of us not so good. If we have a lot of money, it's easier to acquire objects. If we don't, it becomes more difficult. Some of us are good at changing circumstances. We have some influence, some power of influence. Some of us not so good. But in either case, even if we're very good at changing circumstances, even if we're very good at acquiring external objects, what people find is that when they succeed in changing circumstances and acquiring objects, they still don't feel that happiness inside. They may get some thrills, they may taste some pleasures, but those pleasures are always followed by a sense of letdown, a feeling of emptiness. I had my close friend, Raghunath, who does my podcast. We do a podcast together called Wisdom of the Sages. He's in a punk rock band. And once he was touring with another band. This band had become quite popular. They had a big hit. Everybody was hearing, everywhere you turned this song, you'd hear it. And the lead singer of that band was like super handsome guy, and he had this big hit. And he's touring with Raghunath's band, and Raghunath's band was called Shelter. It was like straight up kind of like heavy rock and roll. But all the songs had spiritual messages in them. Messages about yoga, messages about bhakti, messages about truth, based on the sacred text of ancient India and Srimad Bhagavatam and all that. And so this singer, he knew this band is into something spiritual. They're into something deeper. And he was going through his own crisis. And so he approached my friend, can I ask you something? He said, everywhere I go, there are beautiful girls just throwing themselves at me, right? and I can't control myself. And actually, I feel horrible. I think it's going to make me happy, and I get some pleasure and I get some thrill, and then I just feel lousy. I feel crummy. It's like, and I can't stop myself. I don't know what to do. It's kind of like I don't even have the power to stop myself, but I'm just miserable, right? I'm just miserable, and my friend began to explain to him, the happiness is not found through anything external. It's something that's uncovered within us. Now, what's between ourselves and our experience of that happiness, right? For this, we have to go to another nature analogy, okay? Two sages down the river a bit in Haridwar. Have you been to Haridwar? Okay, there we go. So one sage was named Vidura. The other sage was named Maitreya, right? Vidura's beautiful character. You can read about him in the Mahabharata. Have you read Mahabharata before? Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Yes, yes. So Vidura was a wise man, and he was treated unfairly. Rather than complain and get upset and fight back and bear resentment, he accepted it. It came because he was speaking truth to power. Have any of you ever spoken truth to power before? Speak truth to power, right? You speaking truth to power? Yeah. Did you get in trouble? Okay. So he got in trouble and he got thrown out of the kingdom. And he said, I'm not gonna hold any resentment against everyone. I'm gonna use this opportunity. I'm gonna see this as an opportunity. I've been thrown out of my house, thrown out of the kingdom. I'm gonna use this as an opportunity to grow. I'm gonna go to Haridwar. I'm gonna go to the Ganges River. I'm gonna go up to the mountains, and I'm gonna meet sages, and I'm gonna learn from them. I'll use this as an opportunity to grow. So he came here and he met a sage named Maitreya, and he asked a question. And that question is related to yours. He said, if it's true, because I hear from the yogis and the sages that the nature of the self is that we're eternal. And by eternal, it means that not just that we live forever, but it means that we're changeless, right? Our nature is changeless. There's nothing external that can change the nature of the self. External material things are always in a state of change. Spiritual things made of the spiritual energy, including the soul, the self, is changeless. Okay. So by nature, we're changeless, but also it said by nature, we're blissful. So if by nature we're blissful, and if by nature we're changeless, why aren't we experiencing that bliss all the time? It feels like we're changing. It feels like I'm happy, and then I'm sad. I'm excited, and then I'm bored. Right? How can these two both be true? That we're blissful by nature and that we're changeless, but we don't always feel blissful. Good question. It's getting right to the heart of your question now. So maybe this is something to take with you. So he gave another nature analogy. And you can imagine a night like tonight and a full moon in the sky and you're standing by the river. And he said, if we look up at the moon is steady. It's not changing, right? It's shining its light bright into the night. Other things around the moon, like the clouds, change, right? The clouds are moving and shifting and drifting, but the moon is steady. He said, but if you look at the reflection of the moon on the surface of the water, and the water has a different nature than the moon. The water is rippling, right? The water is moving. It's not steady. If you look at the reflection of the moon on the water, then it appears that the moon has taken on the nature of the water and that the moon is rippling. Right? Now, the moon is not rippling. The moon is steady. But because we've mistaken a reflection of the moon on matter, right, it seems that the moon has the nature of the river. He said, similarly, the self is shining steadily. Our nature is changeless. Nothing can touch it. But if we identify not with the soul, the self, but if we identify with the mind, which is made out of a very subtle material energy, and because it's matter, it's always shifting, then we'll think that I'm always shifting. I'm happy now and I'm depressed. I'm going up, I'm going down. He says we need to learn not to identify with the mind. It's not that I'm happy and then I'm depressed. It's my mind is happy and my mind is depressed. My mind is going through these different changes. And when we can begin to observe the mind like an observer like that, and begin to see it as something separate from myself, it's challenging to do. We're very much accustomed to thinking I am my mind. I am my desires, I am my thoughts, I am my passions within. We think that's me. That's not me. That's programming in a machine, a very subtle machine. If we can look at that from a distance, have you practiced meditation before? Were you ever told to sit very still? Right? Close your eyes, bring your mind to your breath, slow everything down, forget the past, forget the future, bring your mind to your breath. When you do that, your mind begins to settle. And then were you told, don't try to change your thoughts. Just watch them as they come and go. Have you ever done that before? Right? Isn't there a profound feeling that you get that you realize, oh, I'm not my mind. My mind has its own agenda. It goes where it wants to go. And I'm sitting here watching the mind. Right? So that feeling, that's a profound birth of knowledge of oneself, of Atmajnana. When you realize that's something separate from me. So if we can separate ourselves from the mind through hearing the wisdom of this tradition on a daily basis, not every now and then, but on a daily basis. And if we can reflect on that knowledge as we go through our days and as we go through our life, that conviction that I'm not my mind, but that I am the self observing the mind will become stronger and stronger. And it'll become so clear that as you move through the world, you see it and you feel it. And you'll become less vulnerable to the ups and downs. And the nature of yourself, the true nature of the self, will start to arise. It's because we're absorbed in the mind that we're not feeling the self, right? So essentially what yoga is all about, we can define it like this. There are many different practices of yoga, but they all share this in common. Yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind for the purpose of the self experiencing their own true nature, and that nature is happiness. Like that. So in a sense, the answer to your question is how can we be happy? Practice yoga. But you really have to know how it works. What am I doing? And how does it affect my mind? Right? If we really understand that, then it can be very effective. Is that all right? Okay, thank you very much. I've met you before, yeah? I saw you today, but did I meet you here last year? Some weeks ago. Okay, thank you. Yeah. All right, everybody. Got the truck going through. Got the kids running by. Here we go.
Thank you. I got one question. So, we are in the Kali Yuga. We're living now in the Kali Yuga. Krishna created the Kali Yuga. He created everything that's happening now, every injustice, so everything. So my big question is, should we fight Maya then? Because when everything will happen, and even the Maya will happen, like, are we actually could handle the injustice that is happening in the world, or do we just acting against our dharma and getting stuck in Maya as well when we try to fight it? Because we can't fight it because it's created by Krishna. I hope you got it what I mean.
You know, it's a very good question, and there's different ways that we can look at it. In one sense, we could say it's created by Krishna. In one sense, we could say everything's created by Krishna. But in another sense, it's not. Like, for instance, we could say the prison is created by the government. But the government would say the only reason why the prison exists is because of the criminal. If it wasn't for the criminal's desire to commit crime, there would be no prison. So in one sense, the prison is created by the government, But in another sense, it's really created by the criminal. Does that make sense? And so they say that this world is a reflection of the spiritual realm, where everything is a bit upside down, right? Here in the spiritual realm, there's nothing but justice. In this realm, there's a constant struggle with injustice. But this realm is a reflection of the spiritual realm. And what is that reflection resting on? Just like if there's a tree and its reflection rests on the surface of the water, if that water dries up, there's no more reflection. The tree stays and there's no more reflection. So in the same way, this material realm and all of its injustice is floating on a surface, and it's the surface of our desire that's separate from the spiritual desire of the spiritual realm. So if we're going to fight Maya, if we want to truly understand injustice and what it is, we can understand that it's a reflection of the truth. But a warped reflection, an upside down reflection, a backwards reflection. And so the way to counter it is to try to raise people's awareness about their own desires. It's going to be the most effective way. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do anything on the external level. We can dedicate our life to fighting injustice. And that's a noble way to live. But if we don't understand the root, then no matter how hard we try, we'll never really be able to solve it. I have a friend who's a Swami, a sannyasi, and he was passing through the airport in Delhi. And he was approached by a woman that had a very high position in the Indian government. It was a position like she was in charge of the ecological kind of initiatives. And they kind of met in the airport. She said, "Swamiji, hello, I would like to ask you a question. You're living as a Swami, but there's so many problems. The earth is in an emergency situation. And people like you are just doing your spiritual practices. And meanwhile, the earth is falling apart and going to hell. Are you comfortable with that? Don't you feel that maybe you should be doing something about it?" And he said, "I appreciate the work that you're doing. And I believe that I also do have a responsibility in this." He says, but I would hope that you could broaden your mind a bit to try to understand what I'm doing, how I feel what I'm doing is important. He said, as a spiritual leader, my job is to help people understand the true nature of the self, to purify their minds, purify their minds of fear, purify their minds of the false conceptions that I need extra resources to be happy, right? We're all thinking I need more than I really need. And because of that, we're destroying the earth. So he says, it's my job to help people understand that, right? It's your job to look into the regulations and pass laws and, do inspections. And that's important work. But even if we cleaned up all the rivers and we cleaned up to all the air, if we haven't cleaned our consciousness, then we're going to just pollute it all again, right over again. So the root of the problem is our ignorance of our true nature, our ignorance of what we feel we need to be happy. And that's another really important way, and I would argue the most essential way to counter all of the problems, all of the injustices, all the suffering. All of the suffering stems from ignorance. And so let's also go right to that root as well. Is that okay? Thank you. It's a nice question. All right. More questions? Yes.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much to see you again. I'm so happy to be back here. I'm late towards the end, but I'm here. And I just wanted to ask, did you finish your book? No? Okay, you can let me know when you finish. I would really like to have. Thank you for. And yeah, especially speaking with my husband, especially we came here just to have an association of sadhus like yourself. And it's always so wonderful. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? We have a small group here today and a lot of people waiting in line. People in line can ask a question if you like. We accept questions from people in line. But we really count on the people sitting down here. Yes.
You were talking, you mentioned earlier something about like the outside affecting you versus as you progress, then you become the light and now it goes the other way and you go from the inside out. And, there's so much that's out there now in the sense of therapy and trauma and narcissistic abuse and working on yourself and all of the dark side and the recovering. And maybe to use an analogy would be, everybody's so focused on working on the rocks and the weeds in the garden that you forget about the flowers and the good stuff and growing the good stuff. You can't just, it's not a garden if all you ever do is deal with the rocks and the weeds, right? And so I've been trying to, and then, there's a truism or a saying that what you focus on and put your attention on, you get more of. Well, if all you're looking at is the bad stuff, and I look at the bad stuff as, going back to the family and trauma and childhood and growing up. That was the outside in, and I'm trying to get, trying to deal with that and get rid of it. But at the same time, I want to find that sun behind the clouds that you're talking about, and how and just kind of be it and enhance it and have that light shine and grow in terms of the way in which it's coming through me. So I guess I'm asking you about the balance between accentuate and expand the positive versus working on the negative and living life from the inside out as the light, as opposed to always having to deal with the outside in, when I'm talking about the outside being bad news, trauma, negativity, the darkness, the bad stuff.
Now that's an insightful question. I think it was the writer Aldous Huxley. He had a statement, I don't remember it exactly, but more or less he said that when you focus on all the darkness in the world, commonly that darkness, you become darkened by it. True. In some ways said. You can look up Aldous Huxley and darkness. I believe you've seemed to have caught on to that a bit yourself. And, the prescription for every person may be a little bit different. I like the attitude of, hey, if we focus enough on the positive, we overcome the negative. Let's see what Aldous Huxley says. He said, this is a different one. Nice try. Yes.
Because of what you just said, it made me think of why do so many cops become criminals?
Why do so many peace activists become violent? Why do so many people that speak of love begin to develop hatred? I was shared here in some of the previous nights. Some people asked me about my story. How did I come to practicing bhakti? And part of it had to do with at a certain age, when I hit my early teens, I got interested in a lot of political activism. And I lived in New York City, and especially I was hanging out downtown. And there's all kind of people to meet. The Yippies had a whole center there. There's all kind of things going on. But at a certain point, I began to realize these people really seem to be able to understand what the problems are and point their fingers at them. But it began to occur to me that they didn't really have the answers. And part of it is because they were beginning to embody some of the qualities of exactly what they were fighting against. Particularly hostility or hatred towards other living beings. And so I agree with you. Now, ideally, one can absorb their mind in the practices of bhakti, and that alone, the purifying effect of that alone, can brighten one up from the inside entirely. But we may have mental conditions or trauma that's so severe that it becomes difficult for us to focus our mind in bhakti, to absorb the mind. We may have loops that play in our mind that have become very, very difficult for us to shake. And that's distracting us from being fully absorbed in the practice. Or maybe if we were in the right atmosphere with the right guidance, even with that, we could be shown how to engage the body and engage the mind. But maybe we don't have that opportunity. Maybe we don't have that quality of guidance or that kind of sangha. So it might be that we have to do some work to look into the mind and confront the darkness that's there and try to shine some light on it. And that may take place through therapy or different kind of therapies that are out there. That might be helpful. Or we might actually be looking back at stuff that we could just leave behind and just move on. So it's not like, I don't believe there's an easy formula to answer it. I think it seems to me like you've kind of intuited this whole thing yourself. I've known people that have really benefited from getting some good counseling, and it's helped them in their spiritual practice. I know people that have come through super traumatic backgrounds, and they are just giving themselves to the bhakti practice, and they're thriving. So it may be different for different people in different circumstances, and bhakti is like that. It's not exactly a one size fits all, and certain things are one size fits all. Like this mantra will fit everybody, but how to live and how to operate and how to serve and what your occupation should be and regarding your family life or marriage life and at what stage of life do you do this and at what stage of life do you do that? Should I go to college? Should I just get a job? Should I get married? Those things may be different, very different for different people according to their own individual circumstances. Is that all right? Okay, thank you. It's insightful. It's the most important. There's a very important instruction given in these sacred texts. Smartavya satatam vishnor vishvartam no najatu chit. That's the beginning of it. Saying there's basically two rules. These are the most important rules. You ready? Big rules. Always remember Krishna. Never forget Krishna. Okay? Smartavya satatam vishnor vishvartam no najatu chit sarva vidi nasedasyor etayor eva kinkara. All the other rules and all the regulations are the servants of this rule. Always remember Krishna. Right? So one way or another, this is another famous verse. One way or another, find a way to bring your mind to Krishna. If doing some therapy if I can't bring my mind to Krishna without a bit of help with therapy, then do the therapy and bring your mind to Krishna. If I can bring my mind to Krishna without the therapy, then bring your mind to Krishna without the therapy, and it'll be therapeutic itself. But one way or another, bring your mind to that ultimate object of meditation. Does that help? Thank you very much. Good question. Welcome everyone. Yes.
Sorry, I have one more question. What is your view about astrology and fate?
Astrology is real, but not every astrologer is. Right? And it's a business because an astrologer will usually read your chart. They'll accept some payment for it, and that's fine. Then they'll have the gems that they want to sell you, and so on and so forth. And so it is a business, and so it's a delicate thing. is an astrologer actually qualified? And is this astrologer really concerned with helping rather than just doing business? These are both important things. Personally, there are statements in these sacred texts that are important. There's certain things in this birth that we can't change. We're all born in a certain spot on the planet, at a certain time, under certain stars, and the influence of those stars or planets have an effect in our life, and that can be read, but it doesn't tell the whole story. It's part of our fate, but we also have free will to engage in relation to that. So two people born under the same stars can respond in different ways to that fate and live very different lives. I personally, the way that I choose to live is my faith is that devotion to Krishna, devotion to Guru. So this Guru Nish, that fate is written in the stars. It's written in our palms. It's written in different ways. I was once reading a book called the Samudra Shastra. It's a book about reading palms based on the Vedic science. And it described these different lines can tell you different things. Like, for instance, these certain lines will tell you how many children you'll have. But then this text, because it's a Vedic text and it's derived out of Vedanta, it said, but if one has strong Guru Nishta. Guru Nishta means steadiness in their focus and their devotion to their Guru. Then they can overcome this fate that's written on their palms. There's another statement in the Puranas that when you're in the temple and standing before the deities of the Lord, and you're singing in Kirtan and clapping your hands, when you clap your hands, all the birds of your karma are flying away, right? Or sometimes they say all the lines in your hands are changing, right? So it's my faith that the power of bhakti, the power of devotion to Guru and to Krishna is more important than any astrological consideration. And if an astrologer is saying it would be inauspicious for you to go to this place on this day, but if I have some service to do to Guru and Krishna there, I'll go and do the service to Guru and Krishna, right? I have more faith in that. Now, at certain times, I hear from an astrologer. When I got married, we had our charts looked at. Wanted to make sure there's no major red flags. Every now and then I go through a transitional period in life. At that time, and rarely, I rarely, maybe every decade or something. And if I feel there's a trusted astrologer, sometimes I'll sit down and hear what they have to say. But the way that I take it is I don't allow it to rule my life, but I try to take something that's consistent with what I've learned in my bhakti teachings. Something that's valuable. There's something else, not astrology, something different. I don't want to get people into all these different things. Have you ever heard of the Enneagram? Have you heard Enneagram? The Enneagram. It's a fascinating science, and I've seen it seems to be. It's kind of understanding different personality types, and what the strengths and the weaknesses of each one are, and then advice of how you can be more integrated and less disintegrated according to your nature. So I once sat down with someone that was expert in that, and they ask you questions, and through that they can tell which personality type you are, and then they can give you some good advice about what to consider. Now, I'm a number one on the Enneagram. Number one on the Enneagram means you're really interested in integrity. You're not so concerned about putting on a show. You want truth. And that can be a good thing. But also, you're a little judgmental. You're a little bit hard on other people because of that judgmentalism. And so anyway, these are just some of the things that are being said. You take yourself a little too seriously, The one, when it's disintegrating, it goes in one direction to number 4, and when it's integrating, it goes to number 7. Number 7 is like more sense of humor, taking things easy, not getting upset. Number 4 is like the tortured artist, kind of person. That was my teenage years, But here's my point. What I heard from it, what the advice that I received was that the common problem for this personality type is you think you're always right. Right? You think you're always right, and you take yourself a little too seriously. And so I took that. I'm not reading the Enneagram every day and changing all kind of, but I said, that makes sense to me. I see that in myself. If I took that to heart, it'll be good for me. And it's totally consistent with everything that I'm reading on Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and so on. Let me embrace that. And so if I do hear from an astrologer, I hear it. It's not the most important thing to me, but it might help me understand something about myself, something useful that I can apply that's consistent with what I've learned about yoga and what I've learned about bhakti, and then I'll take a little something. But I think it's not uncommon that people get a little too caught up in it. Once they develop an interest in it, then it's starting to rule their life. And for all we know, the astrologer may not be that accurate in any case. These Vedic sciences, it's not easy to find someone that really knows how to practice them well nowadays. They're out there for sure, but it may be that there's more people that aren't so qualified than are. Thank you. Yeah. Good Kirtan going on in there. Feel it? But we still need more questions. Or we could all just go into the Kirtan. That is another possibility. But otherwise, I've agreed to take questions here, so I'm happy to take more. Yes.
Would you like some prasadam? No, I'm sorry. How long are you staying in Rishikesh?
A little bit after this festival. I'll say a few days after the festival ends. But let's have a more philosophical question. That's all right. Any other questions? Even a very simple question. Yes.
So on this path, I feel like sometimes there's a lot of goodbyes to old things, to things that I identified with, people I had relationships with. And saying goodbye is just, for me at least, with so much grief. I don't know whether that's normal, but how to deal with this grief, because I know it's a good development in a way, because I can feel the truth of it. But then I feel this disconnect from an old life, and that's sad in a way. I don't want to judge people in my old life, but I sit with them and I'm not feeling connected.
Okay, I'm not sure that I got it. In the beginning, I thought you were saying that there's a lot of goodbyes that we have to say in this life. And so we become separated and we feel some grief from that. That in this world we have relationships and then they split apart and there's some pain that you feel from that. Are you saying specifically because of your spiritual practice? Okay. So people don't understand you anymore. You don't connect in the same way. You don't share the same interest anymore. Like that? And it's sad. I remember I was 20 years old. 20, 21 years. Maybe I just turned 21. I lived in a little apartment in Brooklyn, New York, in a super ghetto. Like, you can't imagine how rough this neighborhood was. But somehow, in that state, as a confused little guy, I got these teachings of bhakti. And at a certain point, it all clicked in me. And when it clicked, it was like, I understand everything now. I really felt I did. I felt like I had been given all the answers of the universe. And it was I'll say this, in certain moments, it was like rushing through my body, the excitement of it. It was, like physically, I felt like, I've got it, I've got it. And it seemed to me like the most logical thing is that now I just have to tell everybody, and they're all going to get it too. Especially like my friends, And I would go to those friends, and they were a total disconnect, right? Come on. Total, it's been something like that for you? Yeah. And then what makes people friends, close friends, intimate friends, is what they share in common. The common understanding that they have, the common interests that they have. And so we can see that we might lose the closeness of some friendships that we have. Now, some things to be careful about. We want to be careful that we don't become judgmental. We want to be careful that we don't speak in ways that are condescending. Because if we do, if we're judgmental, if we're condescending, then it's likely we might really harm that relationship. You might create some scars there that never heal, right? Welcome, Maharaj. Thank you so much for attending. Such a joy whenever you come. So is there a way... Now, we may find that now when I spend that time with that person, it's actually slowing down my growth. That's just the truth. Even though I have such affection for them in my heart, spending time with them is slowing down my growth, and I need to grow. I need the space to grow. That's what this life is for the growth. At the same time, I don't want to be judgmental. I don't want to be condemning, and I want to keep a thread of our relationship together. And so a lot of that has to do with the respect that you show them and the kind words that you speak to them. And if you do that, they may not be able to understand your new life, your new faith. Even they may resent it. It's not uncommon that they're feeling like it's taking my friend away from me. And so they feel a little resentment towards your path. They might even say some things about your path that are not so nice. You don't want to hear too much of that. But at the same time, you don't want to lash out against it. It's more like, I'm sorry, it seems like we're not connecting on this. We don't understand each other. I still love you. But maybe this is something that we just aren't connecting on now. But if you live a life, a good life, and you remain kindly disposed to this person, there's every chance that in the future they may come around. Because the way this world works is if you've got connection to someone that's deeply spiritual, even if you don't understand their spiritual life, that connection is the best connection you can have. Maybe the very most meaningful relationship that person has. So you got to keep it alive. And then the way that this world works is that our lives go through ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs. And when it goes up, we don't think so much about the meaning of life. But when it goes down, we begin to question everything. And then we go to look for someone that can help us understand. And if we know I have a friend, and they seem to be onto something there, let me go ask them. Then that person may come to you at some other point in life. And even though you go through 10, 20, 30 years, that's sad. It's a little heartbreaking. They may come to you 30 years later. And when they do, and when they're finally able to accept the spirituality and the spiritual wisdom and guidance that you have to share with them, then the wait will be worth it. You'll be glad that you didn't push it and ruin it. The way that we live is so important. When people can't hear our words, they can still perceive the value of what we practice through the way that we live, the way that we carry ourselves, the way that we behave. My wife, she worked as a Montessori teacher in New York City. And it's actually, Montessori teacher sounds like, oh, it's such a sweet job. In New York City, it's actually a high pressure job because it costs a lot of money to send your kid to one of these schools. And that means like the parents are like these high stress, high level kind of people in the world. And these people are demanding. They're spending a lot of money. They're very demanding. They're very pushy. They want everything that they've been promised to happen in that school. They want to see it manifest. So you have a triangle. You have the parents, you have the management, the administration of the school, and you have the teachers. And so my wife is in the middle of this triangle. There's also the kids. That's a whole nother thing. But generally, the teachers are complaining about the administration and the parents. The parents are complaining about the administration and the teachers. And the administration is complaining about the teachers and the parents. And they're always criticizing each other. And there's constant talk, constant negative energy, really heavy stuff. And as a teacher, it was common that the other teachers would come up to my wife and share in some gossip, some complaining, some venting of resentments. And my wife wouldn't exactly shut them down, but they would see that she doesn't engage in this level of talk. She comes on with positive energy. And they would see that when there's other silly stuff or even complaining amongst the teachers about each other, she would not engage in speaking negative talk about the other teachers. And so she was living closely with these people. You're with them every day and you're going through the same struggles and challenges in life. And they didn't know exactly what spiritual practice she did. They know she had some interesting beads on, and they know she was a vegetarian, and they knew she was into something. But she didn't preach it to anyone. But what happened was, every time they went through some kind of stressful thing in their life, they would come to her and open up. And when they did, she would start to share the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita, the wisdom of the Upanishads. She would share this with them, and at that moment, they were very open for it. Very open. So there's different ways that we reach people and touch people, but it's a fact that sometimes we're going to have to pass through periods of a bit of mourning for a relationship that meant a lot to us, but that is no longer fruitful or no longer alive. And that's even that sadness in life. Feeling that sadness is also a good thing. Feeling a little of that sadness. You can feel all the sadness if you have an inner connection to God in your own heart. Because then you're holding on to that. Then you're holding hands with God and talking to God within your own heart. And you're saying that, dear God, isn't this sad? Now, here I am, I've put myself into this dark world, having ignored you so much, but you stayed with me all throughout it. And now I'm awakening to your presence in my life. And the sad things that I passed through in this life, they're also helping me grow. They're also helping me understand that all the relationships in this world are temporary. That the relationships of this world, the yogis say it's like if there's a raging river, and on that river are floating two little twigs. And for a moment, those two little twigs join each other, and then the force of the water pulls them apart, never to be joined again. They say our lives and our relationships are like that. Now that's a little sobering to hear. It's not easy to hear, but it's truth. And so ignoring truth, pushing it aside, that doesn't help. We might be able to push it a little bit deep into the subconscious mind, but it's always playing in the background. The fear, the anxiety. A yogi is able to confront that fear with knowledge and say, yes, that's the nature of the relationships in this world. But there's other relationships There is such a thing as relationship on the spiritual platform that's eternal, right? That's fully satisfying. So let me live that life, feel that connection. If I'm feeling some of the mourning of the relationships of this world, it's helping me let go. But I won't give up. I won't give up on this relationship. I'll be patient. I also received one piece of advice from another sadhu once, and that I've tried to live by this. And there's been several times in my life that I've been very happy that I did. Looking back, I'm saying I'm so glad he told me that. I'm so glad I listened. I'm so glad that I applied it. And that was never break a relationship with another yogi, with another bhakti yogi. A relationship may break in a sense. Don't be the one that says the words that breaks the relationship. Don't be the one that determines, okay, this relationship is over. Sometimes maybe we need to create a little distance, right? Create a little distance so it doesn't break. So sometimes we need to create a little distance. Ooh. Are you okay, sir? There we go. Always some kind of struggle in this material world. We're all falling down in one way or another. Okay. So it's like that, you know? So take heart. Know that ultimately the future is bright. There's some darkness in this world. It's going to enter into our life a little bit. It's sad. Don't push it too much. Don't be judgmental, and be there for that person. I can see some spiritual happiness shining in you right here. So I think other people will see that too. They'll recognize it, even if they don't recognize it at first. You know? Okay, thank you. We have some more time for another question or two. I'll take one from Maya, and I'll take one.
Thank you. I kind of wanted to build off of your question and the metaphor you just gave. So if we're like twigs passing along the river, what about our relationship with our like spiritual teachers, be it mentors, guides, gurus?
There's a text that you know of. There's a 500-year-old spiritual text on Bhakti Yoga that maybe is my favorite text of all. It's called the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's a biography of Sri Chaitanya, but it's more than that. It's a book that explains in depth this deepest path of bhakti. And in that book, there's one conversation. And this conversation may be the deepest conversation that ever took place. I see it that way. Because it's Krishna himself in the form of Sri Chaitanya. So you have God on one side of the conversation. And rather than be the instructor, he finds someone that's so qualified that he questions this person. So imagine this person teaching God, in a sense. This is a very high-level conversation. And Sri Chaitanya is asking these questions, and one of the questions he asks is, what is the most painful thing? And this incredibly deep bhakti yogi said, I only know of one real deep pain in life, and that is separation from another bhakti yogi. Other than that, I can tolerate anything, but that's feels like the greatest loss. Right? And so we do experience that in this world too. Sometimes our deepest spiritual relationships, there's separation. Maybe separation due to space, like, you know, we live in different places, or maybe due to death, there's separation. I've been in the position where I've lost the association of my guru. Maharaj here has been through that as well. In our path, we understand that these spiritual relations are of a different nature than the material ones. That the connection, the nature of spirit is that it's eternal. And so when there's a connection on the spiritual level, that survives when everything else falls apart. There's a statement that Srila Prabhupada wrote. I want to see if I can phrase it exactly as he said it. The guru lives forever in his instruction. And through that instruction, the disciple lives forever with him. Right? So there's a real connection, even though there may not be a physical connection on the spiritual level. And it's not just a sentimental saying. It's actually a reality. That what is this relationship between two spiritual, let's say guru-disciple relationship. Guru is not exactly the person, but it's the spiritual truth working through that person, descending through that person to another person. And that truth doesn't go away. And so when that comes to you through another person, you have a relationship in the context of eternal truth with that person. And even if they're not with you physically, you're never alone. That if you remember the instruction, if you remember the teachings, if you remember the guidance, there's with you as palpably, as truly as if they're physically present with you. But that doesn't mean that on the emotional level there's not some bitter but bittersweet feeling of separation. And this is something that our lineage goes into great depth to speak about. When there's something spiritual, whether it appears to be happy or sad, there's an ecstasy in it. It's something very subtle and not easy to understand. The deepest yogis, they say that the material world, even if it looks like enjoyment, it's actually suffering. And the spiritual realm, even if it looks like suffering, it's actually the deepest enjoyment. And so separation in this world causes suffering. Separation on the spiritual level, because the separation increases the feeling, and because it's a feeling of love, one feels a deeper ecstasy even in separation. So it may be that we become separated in one sense, externally from a dear Vaishnava, and we do feel a sense of internal pain. But there's actually something very subtly beautiful in that pain too, because you're feeling closer to that person. You know, we celebrate both the appearance days, the birthdays of our gurus, and also the disappearance days. And if I were to be honest, I think sometimes I feel the deeper experience on the disappearance day. Because somehow that feeling of separation is so profound. It moves one so much that it deepens the absorption, and that deepens the feelings, and it ultimately deepens the ecstasy. So this realm of bhakti is a very unique and special realm of yoga. And as you go through life, you'll be able to experience these things more and more, in your own heart. Thank you. And one more question.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I think I'm still a little unclear on what constitutes devotional service on like a day-to-day basis. Because I think a devotee told me one time there was maybe 3 kind of spheres or levels of service, and I'm still a little unclear about that, and especially if you don't live where there's other devotees and not being able to serve other devotees.
I'm not sure what's meant by the 3 spheres. It might be 3 levels that one performs devotional, 3 levels of deepening awareness, but I'm not sure. But when we say Srila, if we go, there was a great teacher of bhakti that lived 1,000 years ago, and his name was Ramanujacharya. And in his day, it was a different world than we live in now. And when he would write about bhakti, it was a lot in response to other types of Vedantins. And when he used the word bhakti, specifically what he was speaking about is a deep state of meditation where one feels love in their heart for God. And 1,000 years later, that Ramanuja was one of the great acharyas, one of the historically powerful leaders that for thousands and thousands of years people will speak about, because his gift and his gift was so meaningful and important. Let me just frame this for a second. Now, within his lineage, it's a bhakti lineage, a different one than the one that we practice in. Today, that lineage still continues. And the leader of that lineage is a very staunch sannyasi, very learned, very strict, very deeply devotional and realized yogi. And he was asked, in our modern times, are there any great acharyas on the level of Ramanuja or Madhva, these historic acharyas that people will speak about thousands of years from now? Do you see anyone from the modern time that people will remember like that thousands of years from now? And he said, I can see one person like that. And that was Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who's not from his lineage, but he could see his influence was so powerful. His insights were so deep, and he was given special empowerment by God to be able to understand in this day, in this age, how to present the truths of bhakti unchanged, but in a way that will make the most sense and be most effective for everyone. And he was able, and he proved it by taking bhakti and spreading it, taking it out of India really for the first time and spreading it throughout the whole world. So Ramanuja, when he used the word bhakti, especially, he was referring to this deep meditation within the mind and heart, almost like a state of trance. But when Srila Prabhupada translated bhakti, the most common way that he translated it was devotional service. So he translated it as the love that one feels manifest in pleasing the one that you love, pleasing Krishna through service. But when we hear service, like that word today, we think of like customer service, or, I go to a hotel and there's service there, or that kind of thing. Service certainly can be expressed in menial ways. Right now we can see a group of really advanced yogis, washing plates. Look at how blissful they are. Most people you go into the back of any restaurant and you watch people like washing the plates, they're not as happy as these people. But because they're deep yogis, they're feeling a bliss inside of service. This is devotional service. But devotional service can manifest in any way that we act to please the object of our love, to please Sri Krishna. I remember once when I was a very new practicing bhakti yogi, and I was with my guru, and we were in one room, and there were the deities of Radha and Krishna in the room, small deities, and he was going to meet with someone in another room. So he said, okay, I'm going to meet with this person in the other room now. And my name was Dave at the time. He said, and Dave, you sit here and you chant for the pleasure of Radha and Krishna. You chant your japa for the pleasure of Radha and Krishna. You do devotional service. And at that time, I thought this was meditation and devotional service was a different thing, right? But no, he saw this as when you chant, you're chanting to please God. When you study, you're studying to please God. When you wash plates, you're washing plates to please God. When you serve food, you're serving food to please God. When you cook food, when you offer food, when you sing, whatever it is that you do, when you speak, you do it all to please God. Then it's all devotional service. So that devotional service may manifest in unlimited variety of ways. There's certain ways, and we've been talking about those in the mornings, like these 9 standard inherent bhakti practices or expressions. That's there. But almost anything, if it's done for the pleasure of God, washing a plate can be done as devotional service, chanting a mantra. So I get it. You're thinking, I live a bit isolated from other Vaishnavas. Am I going to be able to engage in devotional service? And it's wonderful that the desire to serve is welling up in you. And now what you just need is more guidance to how to be engaged in devotional service in your particular circumstance. What it will take, what type of sadhana. how much in your day, how to take your responsibilities in life and begin to see them and conceive of them as devotional service. When you need to travel, maybe from where you live, and connect with other bhakti yogis and get more inspiration, and so on. You'll need guidance in it. But devotional service, it means that now what you do for God. Like that, one way or another. Okay. All right. Everybody's been absolutely wonderful spending this evening with you. I thank you all so much for coming. If you would like to hear more of these talks or that we've been doing before that we'll do after, Gabriella here will connect you with that. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., I believe Yogi True is teaching. If not, some other wonderful yoga teacher will be teaching yoga at 8 a.m. in the hall here, and meditation. At 9 o'clock, I'm going to speak about the sage Vyasadeva and the wonderful gifts that he shared with this world. Everything we see around us, all the practices and all of the yogis and all of the teachings, it's all coming through his incredible gift to the world. It's something that every yogi should know about. So I encourage you, if you're not so familiar with who he is, please come. I believe you'll be glad that you did. Otherwise, wonderful prasadam, wonderful kirtan. There's still more happening tonight, and we still have another 10 nights to go. So there's plenty to come still. Thank you all so very much. Hari Om Tat Sat.